Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we have got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde Cubs, White Sox coming to reality, and a little bit of Bears news here and there. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is over now, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com, picking yourself up a hat, jersey, shirt, and signing up for the season ticket list so you can attend every game. Only 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. Head on over to icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex.
Yeah, that was quite a strange week we've seen. We've seen some really bad and then some really good, but if you look at the whole perspective of time, it's been more bad than good, but maybe things are finally starting. I don't know, I hate saying that because I feel like every time I say it, that happens. So I'm going to try to not predict the future as best I can while giving some analysis about all this.
I mean, it was not a bad prediction to make. The Padres are an awful team, and the Cubs just went on the West Coast trip and pooped the proverbial bed. I think that would be a fair statement.
Yeah, especially since you got swept by essentially a AAA team. You couldn't hit. I think, the last game they had 3 hits total? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was, they had 3 hits and 2 walks.
Yeah, that's, not great.
No, not at all. If you've been out of town or haven't had a chance to watch baseball this week, what happened was, what we're referring to is the Cubs went on a 6-game West Coast trip, where they played 3 games against the Dodgers where they got swept. And we assumed that the Padres would be a team that the Cubs could get right with, and they didn't. They ended up getting swept by the Padres. And it was an ugly fashion. The first game of that series, Hendricks started great. You had Hayward knocked in some runs to give the Cubs a lead. Hendricks was perfect through 3 innings, and you're like, all right, I like where this is going. And in the 4th inning, everything just sort of, the wheels fell off the track.
Yeah, and it evaporated so fast. What was interesting about that game was I was watching the first few innings, and as you know, they had a ton of walks. The guy Cozart on the Padres was not throwing strikes at all. And what I said was, we got those 2 runs in, but boy, we could have done so much more damage. With that being said, the way Hendricks was going the first few innings, it looked like we weren't going to need more than a few runs, because it looked like he could go the distance at some rate, or at least go 7-8 innings and give up 1 or 2 at the most, so it didn't look like we needed a whole lot of run support. But then the train fell off the bridge, and the Cubs did nothing offensively since. It was nuts.
Oh yeah, it was bad. You're right. The Cubs got 10 walks in the game, and they only scored 2 runs.
There was a key moment early on in that game. In the first inning, Hayward hit the RBI single. 2 runs in, there were still men at the corners. Hayward at first, and whoever was at third, I can't remember. Javier Baez comes up. He has a full count. The pitch is almost in the other box, and he swings and misses at it. I mean, he couldn't have hit that with a 15-foot pole, and he swung at it, and that ended the inning. It either ended the inning or it was 2 outs, but they didn't get any more. But it was a huge strikeout, because if he would have walked right there, who knows what they could have done. So, that right there was early on frustrating, but like I said, it looked like the pitching was going to hold up, especially against that Padres lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres pitching is not good. Their hitting is not good, but the Cubs just, I mean, Hendricks gave up a grand slam in the 4th. That's very unusual for him to even have that many guys on base, let alone give up the home run. You saw that in that game, Schwarber moved down in the order. He batted second, and Zobrist was the leadoff man. I don't think he got any hits that game, but he got 3 walks.
Yes.
So he got on base 3 times. So that's that's a positive. But the Cubs, like I said, 10 walks, 2 hits, and 1 for 10 runners in scoring position. That's just a recipe for disaster if you can't knock guys in.
So what was really frustrating for me about the inning that the Padres hit the grand slam, those runners got on, and it was a couple of ground balls and little bloop hits, so nothing was really hit hard until the grand slam, and that was really frustrating.
Yeah, it seems like Hendricks is I don't know, this year the luck is not on his side.
Well, when you're a pitcher that relies on contact, I guess you're going to have stuff even out like that.
Yeah, especially when, you had your best season. I mean, your short career, but your best season ever in your short career was behind statistically the best defense in baseball history. Once that defense drops down back to reality a little bit, that's going to affect what you do as a pitcher.
Right, and like I said, he wasn't getting hit hard until the grand slam. But, it's going to happen. Even soft contact, even when you get fooled, it's the game of baseball, so it's going to fall in at times. It's not always going to go your way. It's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, and that series sucked because, I mean, obviously the getting swept in, coming back from the West Coast trip with no wins at all was bad enough. But it was, they should have won. It was just that bad inning that cost them the game in Monday's game. Tuesday's game, they were just bad. Eddie Butler looked terrible.
Yeah.
But Wednesday's game, they should have won. Arrieta pitched well enough to get them that win, and they were up against the Perdomo, who's a bad pitcher. I mean, he has a monster ERA, and the Cubs couldn't do anything against him.
They couldn't square him up. They couldn't really get into many good counts. They just flailed at everything, and it looked terrible. It was really, really frustrating because when you look at this Cubs team and you look at the way they swing the bat and you look at the way they have such patient at-bats, you can tell that, just something wasn't right with the offense. It wasn't doing what it normally did. It was hacking away at everything. It was being, too aggressive in counts that shouldn't have been aggressive and, trying to kind of play the big ball hero in a ballpark that's kind of hard to do that in. So it just seemed like everything was off.
And Wednesday was another situation where they were 0 for at the leadoff spot. And that's always I understand Madden with his, they only lead off once in the game, but, think about every great team. They've had a leadoff hitter that gets on. Last year, the Cubs had Dexter Fowler, who, despite, it's not like he's a Hall of Fame player, but he's a nice player, and he had a really good year. and he got on base for the Cubs, and the Cubs scored runs. There's nobody that's consistently doing anything at the leadoff spot. You tried Schwarber, and that was disastrous. You've tried Zobrist, and you had a couple good games, but for the most part hasn't been that productive either.
Yeah, it's been better, but it's definitely not what Dexter Fowler was last year. With Zobrist, it was like you said, it was looking good the first few games. But yeah, it's definitely not what Dexter Fowler was doing last year.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that they're going to have to address. They need to be able to get guys on base. Hitting's contagious. Getting on base is contagious. And if you start the game off with a strikeout right off the bat, then that just sets the tone for the game. If you have a guy slap a nice single, up the middle, or draw a walk, then suddenly you're setting yourself up for business because you got a guy on base and you're ready to go.
Well, how many times last year did Fowler lead off a game with like an 8, 9, 10 pitch at bat, fouling off a bunch of pitches, taking a lot of close ones, and eventually either getting a hit or drawing the walk, or at the very least, at least drive the opposing pitch count to double-digit pitches already after one batter. It seemed like Fowler did that a ton last year. I think it was Game 2 of the NLDS versus Jeff Samardzija, where he had like an 11-pitch at bat to start the game, and he eventually doubled. So the you go, we go last year was something special, and it's something that has not been here this year.
Absolutely. It's something that the Cubs can't ignore and can't pretend that it's not an issue. They've got to figure that out. And if it comes down to, having to play John Jay regularly and sitting somebody else, then that's sort of what you got to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now Joe Madden is trying a lot of different things. I mean, today, yesterday, and the day before, Ian Happ has been leading off, and a lot of people thought how weird that was, and I even said, I'm like, I trust Joe, but this is not really what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, I understand because he's been getting on base, and he's been getting hits, and you're like, well, let me just move him up, but the results haven't been there either. It's like that's a cursed spot in the Cubs lineup right now.
Right, exactly. It's just, it hasn't been working like we've seen it before. It doesn't mean it won't happen eventually, but, you look at some of the Cubs' struggles so far this year, from the offensive side at least, that's definitely one glaring thing that a lot of people point out. What is also kind of interesting is that you look at the way the lineup is built day in, day out. It kind of varies from pitcher 8 and pitcher 9. Like right now we're seeing Kyle Schwarber in the 9 spot and Hendricks in the 8 spot. And that hasn't always been the case, but you're seeing a lot of just changing around of that because in 2015, pretty much the pitcher batted 8th all the time. Last year, we didn't really see the pitcher bat 8th. This year, it's been a combination of the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Madden is just, even though he's not admitting it to the media and in public, I think he's really frustrated because he's trying everything possible to do and nothing is working. There's no spark that the team has. But the one saving grace of all of this is this division sucks,
to say the least.
They went on a six game losing streak on a road trip and didn't lose any ground in the division.
No, because, I mean, let's look at everything else. The Reds have fallen back to reality. The Pirates aren't any good. The Brewers are starting to show their weaknesses as we thought, and the Cardinals have been inconsistent. Really inconsistent.
Yeah, didn't they get swept by the Dodgers as well?
No, the Cardinals did win a game.
Okay. But yeah, so they didn't lose any ground. So they come back to Wrigley. They start this 3-game series weekend series against the Cardinals. And I hate the Cardinals. So it was, for me, I was getting like some butterflies in the stomach just because I was like, man, they're on a 6-game losing streak and they got the Cardinals coming to town. Dexter Fowler's getting his ring. Is he going to do something really awesome? And we're going to, it's going to drive the fans crazy that he's not here anymore. And then he gets his ring and first at bat hits a home run. And I'm just like,
an absolute Titanic blast.
Yeah. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is exactly what I feared. And it happened. But I mean, lo and behold, the Cubs come in, and they after that inning played a really good game against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, how do I say this? They showed why they're losing that Cardinal magic.
Yeah, well, you look at everything that happened after pretty much the first inning or two. John Lackey was phenomenal. He, started off a little shaky, and then everything kind of came back together. And then the Cubs just executed when things need to be executed. Okay, yeah, the J double play with the bases loaded, 1 out was pretty bad. But you look at Jason Hayward, he drove in the run with a double. Piscotty lost it in the sun, but I mean, he absolutely crushed the ball. And then when Hayward came back to bat, he wasted no time with a runner at third in less than 2 outs, driving the ball to get that run in. And that's been something that the Cubs have been so up and down with this year. They've gone through stretches where they couldn't execute that way, and we finally saw a huge moment where they did execute that properly when Hayward hit that sac fly to center field. And that's the kind of things that make you say, that's what we're looking for. That's what we need. We need that execution. Because people are talking about the runners in scoring position issue and how ugly the numbers looked at that road trip. And people bring up BABIP and luck, and I get that. That really is something important you do have to bring up. But based on my observation the past, few weeks, yeah, they've had some BABIP luck, but you look at the failure to execute with pop-ups and weak ground balls and strikeouts. To me, that's not BABIP luck. That's just failure to execute. And we finally saw that execution in that big moment in what was fairly big game. I know it's only early June, but it was a big game. So that brought a lot of relief to me and other Cubs fans.
Yeah, and it's funny because Jason Hayward, you look at the batting average and it's not that great. It's not bad. It's not great. But it just seems like this year he's gotten some really good timely hitting. It's just kind of like an eyeball type thing. But I don't know if it's just because I set the bar so low after last year. But it seems like he's been a guy that's come through in the clutch for the Cubs.
He's hitting the living cover off the ball, and he could easily have his average 10, 20 points higher. He really could. How many times has he missed a home run at the foul pole by just a few feet? Or how many times the wind has knocked something down? Or how many times he just scolded the ball right at someone? I mean, I think he's pretty much the highest exit velocity on the team. But, geez, he could be doing a lot better than his numbers show. I think Hayward has been absolutely fantastic this year with the bat. He's making hard contacts pretty much every time, it seems like.
Yeah, and also in this game, you saw the Cardinals are a terrible defensive team. And it's part of the reason why I'm not worried about them come August, September, being in that division race. Because when you're a bad defensive team, is those 50-50 games down at the end, you don't put up the numbers you need to be there at the end. And they're not a good enough team with their rotation. They're not a good enough team with their at-bats to compensate for their lack of defense.
On paper, the Cardinals don't scare me at all, but I always say to myself, they're the Cardinals. They'll find some BS garbage way to pull enough wins out of their ass to stay in this thing. I mean, I can never, ever just fully rule them out, even though on paper they don't scare me at all. They just don't. But they're just one of those teams that I'll never fully count out. They just, if there's anyone who could find a muster 5 garbage out of ass wins over a week or so, it's the Cardinals.
Kind of, yeah. That's pretty much them. So yeah, the Cubs win 3-2 in that first game and sort of pulled that out at the end. You had a Chris Bryant home run, but other than that, the Cubs didn't look great. Other than Lackey looked fantastic. Then yesterday's game, Ian Happ in the leadoff spot again. Lester on the mound, and Lester against the Cardinals always scares me because they're that team that is so aggressive on the base path with him. But he got a pickoff.
And it was so funny because on the Cardinals broadcast, Tim McCarver said he's not going to throw to first. And then right away, he throws to first and gets him by a mile.
Yeah, because who's expecting that?
Nobody is.
Nobody. And so you get Lester the pickoff, and Lester pitched okay, but it was that home run that was really killed an otherwise good outing for him.
Yeah, I know. And it was a pitch that I saw the replay. I didn't watch it live. I wasn't home yesterday, but I saw the pitch and I was like, goodness gracious. It was like in the dirt almost, and Yachty just completely golfed it out.
Yeah, I was watching that game and I was like, are you kidding me? Is it going to be Yachty that beats the Cubs this game? Ugh.
3 of his 6 home runs are against the Cubs.
Yeah, and I was so happy that he giveth the Cardinals the lead, and then he giveth back to the Cubs because it was they were going to pull the pitcher out against Schwarber, and Molina waved him off and let him pitch, and Schwarber comes out with that grand slam, and that was obviously the difference of that game.
Yeah, and a lot of people are criticizing Mike Matheny for that, and it's kind of going to show how it almost feels like there are times when Yachty really is kind of the manager out there. I mean, he let his veteran catcher shake him off, like tell him, no, don't, and, look what happened.
I mean, if you're a manager that's super settled in your role and you've got a veteran catcher, all right, you go with that. If you're Mike Matheny, you got to feel your feet to the fire a little bit because the expectations are so high in St. Louis that do you leave decisions like that up to anybody else, or do you take it? I don't. If I'm Mike Matheny,
I mean, look, I understand Yachty is a great, smart baseball player, but you're the manager for a reason. If you're making that call, you better stick to your gut. Let's just say this, if you're influenced by anything but yourself on the field as a manager, I just think there's something wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're a veteran manager and you have a good rapport and you've got a guy that's the caliber of Yachty, all right, that's fine. Because ultimately, if you're on the fence, you give him the benefit of the doubt, and if you feel super strongly, then you just override him. But I just don't think Mike Matheny has that rapport, and I don't think he has that clout to be able to get away with something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I was more impressed by than that Schwarber grand slam, because when he hits balls, he bam hits it far. But I was more impressed with to get on base is John Jay. John Jay is, I don't know if you saw that sequence before the grand slam, is he was down 1 ball 2 strikes in the count and ended up leaning into a pitch, getting hit and taking a base that way. That was a veteran move right there.
Yeah, I know. That was something. Yeah. A little distracted right now because Kyle Hendricks just gave up a 3-run bomb, so that's not good.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yep, 2 walks and then Piscotty, first pitch. I said, here comes Piscotty to hit a home run in my mind. First pitch, he just launches it out of the park.
Piscotty, who isn't hitting terribly this year, it just drives me crazy.
Piscotty's hitting like 245. But he's killed the Cubs.
Oh, he's been a Cub killer.
Seems like Wrigley Field, he hits at least 2 runs a series at Wrigley Field. 2 home runs a series.
Yeah, he's a miserable person. I don't like seeing him. What else? Yeah, so right now the Cubs are playing the third game of this series, and it's Hendricks versus Michael Wacha. And, you got the update that I didn't know about, that Hendricks gave up a 3-run bomb is not something you want to see.
Right, yeah. I mean, here's the thing with Hendricks. I've been watching this game the whole time we've been on the air, and the defense has been spectacular, and the wind has also taken away some stuff. He does not look sharp at all today, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's bad news. It's nice. It's really nice weather out there. I don't know you can't blame the weather for this one.
No, you really can't. I mean, man, he just does not look sharp.
But with the Cubs is, we've talked about the defensive struggles. The rotation struggles have been there. But the biggie is there's only 3 regular players on this roster that are batting over 250.
Right, and I was actually talking about that yesterday because I was looking at my phone at the stats and I just kind of groaned at it. I'm like, geez. I mean, I know on base percentage is kind of the biggest important thing, but still, it's not fun to look at.
No, and we all talk about Kyle Schwarber and his struggles, but Addison Russell is struggling almost as bad.
Here's the thing. Everyone is distracted by Kyle Schwarber, and I get that, but Russell has been terrible.
Russell's been terrible. Ian Happ hasn't looked good in 2 weeks. So it's Bryant, Hayward, and Baez are the only Cubs batting over 250. And I don't think they have anybody batting over 280.
Not right now, because Bryant's in the 270s right now.
Yeah, Baez is in the 270s.
Oh, John Jay is like 280 something, but he's not an everyday player.
Yeah, he's not an everyday player. So you've got guys aren't hitting. Bryant not hitting. Russell not hitting. Schwarber not hitting. Whoever you have in center field not hitting. Zobrist not hitting. Rizzo not hitting. It just. This has to turn around, whatever the case may be.
Right, there's no consistency because when one guy gets hot, a bunch of guys get cold, and when those guys get hot, the other guys get cold. It seems like no one's clicking at the same time, where we saw last year in the second half when everyone was just clicking at the same time.
Yeah, and it's I know hitting's contagious. It's the old saying, but nobody is being consistent here. And at least at the beginning of the season, as you had Zobrist and Fowler that carried the offensive load, and because they were both hitting so well, and it made up for the fact that guys were struggling. And then by the time everybody else came around, those two were coming back down to earth. Everybody else was coming up, and you just saw the result of that.
Right, exactly. What's also really weird is that you look at the way they're all hitting at the same time, and you look at you get a different sense of how each one is in a different situation, because obviously sometimes there are situations when they lead off an inning, or there's guys on, or you're trying to keep an inning alive, so on and so forth. And they've all gone through stretches where it doesn't look like they can keep a rally going or start a rally, because everyone's kind of hot and cold at different times. You don't see that chemistry, and that's why we really haven't seen a lot of innings where they pummel the ball all over the field, and then when it looks like they're about to, like in the first game in the Cardinals series, then the double play happens, and suddenly what looks like is a big inning is over.
Yeah, and this week, Nick Cafardo wrote two interesting things about the Cubs. One of them was that he believes that the retirement of David Ross has had a much bigger impact on the Cubs than the team is willing to admit. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, the people are talking about the presence of Ross and Fowler as kind of a big story topic right now. Here's the thing. I don't know what happens in that clubhouse. I really don't. You hear about what happens, but you really never get a true sense of it unless you're there. So it's hard for me to judge, but a lot of me says not having Dexter Fowler and David Ross on this team, it shouldn't excuse the fact that they're not playing the right fundamentals. Like Dexter Fowler, yeah, he was a great leadoff guy, and he really did set the tone a lot, but you'd think these hitters are all so good, and a lot of them are, so young and so full of the tank. You would think that they'd be able to figure out things by now, and not having Dexter Fowler shouldn't affect the way the pitching is. Now, you could say that with David Ross. That I get a little more. The way he calls the game, the more he defends behind the plate. That I could see more. But when you look at the perspective of defense and you look at the perspective of hitting, I don't see much of an excuse. I don't know for sure. That's just kind of how I see it.
The only thing I can think as far as that goes is when you've got such a young team, that not having somebody like a David Ross, who's a calming influence and is like an intermediate between your coaches and other young players that you can go to, and helps you because he played in the league for so long. He understands slumping.
Right.
He understands how to come out of it. He understands that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and just keeps reminding guys that. And that's the only thing I can think of is, he helped guide young players and keep them on the right path. And you don't have that influence, and you see young guys start to regress a little bit.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely get that. And, maybe it does play a big effect. Maybe it does. I don't know how much longer you can go on and sulk about that, because he's not around anymore. He's gone. You gotta figure out a way to get around that. I mean, that's all I can really say. I know I probably sound like a total jerk right now, and I never want to sound like that, but that's just the reality is it's not like he's gonna unretire and come back. There needs to be a way to adjust to it.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's they're big boys making a lot of money, being professional players, that they got to put their big boy pants on. But I understand not having that influence, but it's not like they can't send him a text or give him a call and say, "Hey, listen, I'm struggling. Can you talk it over?" And he wouldn't be there for you.
Oh yeah, I mean he loves those guys. He would do anything for them.
So that's there, like I understand that it might have an impact, but it should, at this point in the season, they should have figured out what they can do to mitigate that and move forward as a team.
And you know what? Maybe it takes some adjustment period. Maybe it does. Like I said, I'm not a professional ball player. I really don't know exactly. So, maybe if they just kind of grow through time and things kind of adjust, then, okay. I just don't like saying, oh, well, because Dexter Fowler is gone, the team isn't playing well because Dexter Fowler's not there. That shouldn't make or break the team. Yes, he was worth a crap load last year. He was an all-star. He put up career high numbers. Really, really, really good stuff. But him being removed shouldn't take away all the talent that these other guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing Nick Cafardo wrote about was that the Cubs are looking to acquire a top starter, not a bottom of the rotation starter, but actual top line starter. Thoughts on that, and who is even available
For like a trade, you mean?
Yeah, because he said that they would be looking mid-season.
Well, you got to look for a guy with control over a few years. You don't want to get a rental. I think Archer is in the talks a lot, but I think Sonny Gray is more realistic. He has control. I don't think he'll cost as much, and he's still fairly young. So that might be somebody you go after.
And it's just whether or not the Oakland A's want to give him up. But, I mean, that's an interesting one because I just assumed that they were going to try to go for a back-end starter and try to stabilize that 5 spot, the Eddie Butler spot. But it seems that they're more, if he's correct, it seems like they're a little more concerned about the starting rotation than they let on.
Right. We know something's going to be done. It's not as, I think people are simplifying it too much. They just say, oh, go out and get a pitcher. Oh, go out and get a pitcher. Oh, go out and get a pitcher. Yeah, I know they're going to try to do that, but you realize people aren't just going to hand over pitchers to us. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to give them something.
And if it's a good pitcher, you're going to have to give them a lot of something.
Right. People are telling me, maybe Archer won't cost that much. Are you kidding? A Tampa Bay Ray team with a ton of, problems that they're trying to rebuild, a small market, that they're going to take Archer for a low price? They're going to want a king's ransom for that.
Yeah, it's nobody is looking to give away players in Major League Baseball. Nobody's looking to give players away.
No, especially not a small market team like that.
And it's funny because I saw MLB Trade Rumors was hinting that in the offseason, the Cubs could be interested in Derek Holland. And my brain exploded a little bit because of some of his starts with the White Sox have just been dog doo-doo.
The last one, especially against the Tigers, that was not pretty.
No, that was not even close to being pretty. That was absolutely butt ugly. What else do we have with the Cubs? What do we do with Albert Almora Jr. and what do we do with Kyle Schwarber?
Well, the Kyle Schwarber thing has been talked about a lot. And a lot of people give different opinions on it. And while it seems easy to just say send him down, I mean, a lot of people bring up this, and I think even Theo said it. Crushing AAA pitching, not with your top coaches, really isn't going to do you much good. It really isn't. I mean, if they were to send him down because they were going to work on his fielding, that would make more sense. And also people have said, look at young players who struggle in the big leagues. They've worked it out with their big league coaches and managers. And that, I think, is really important to keep in mind. However, it seems like Kyle is struggling at such an enormous rate that you'd almost be more tempted to send him down because of that. That's what makes this really difficult, in my opinion. But I think that the points are right, saying that sending him down won't really do much good for him in the long haul. This is something he has to work out. Almora, the thing with Almora is he just can't fit in that lineup. It seems like there's a roadblock everywhere. Whether it was Hayward in center, or Jay in center, or Happ in center, and Schwarber in the outfield, and Zobrist in the outfield, even Bryant in the outfield. It just seems like there are so many roadblocks for him. It's hard to know what to do with him. But I think what's best for Almora right now is to be playing every day. At least a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's my concern is he's a young player. It's not like he's a veteran that knows the ropes and is established in his career. He's a young player. He needs to be playing. And I think it's a disservice to him to be in the majors if you're not going to play him. He's not even platooning. That poor kid is just lamenting away. You either got to package him up and trade him, or you got to send him down to Iowa and let him at least play every day. And
right.
With Schwarber is, I was with you when you can't. What's the point of sending him down to AAA where he's just going to clobber the ball? But we talked about it a little bit last week, and it reared its ugly head again this week. Is his timing is way off. He's not getting around on 92-mile-an-hour fastballs right down the middle. He's not getting around on those. A similar problem is being had by Randall Grichuk from the Cardinals. And they sent him down to single A. And they didn't send him down there to play games. They sent him down there with their hitting instructors, and they're just working with him. He's not playing. He's, if they need him to go, he'll take a couple of at-bats, but he's just working with instructors and getting his timing back together, getting out any kinks in his swing, and things like that. And you wonder if that's not a possibility for Schwarber, is letting him go down and work on his timing, work on any kinks in his swing, and get back on track that way.
Yeah, sometimes it really depends on what the organization feels. And what Theo has been telling, he doesn't give a lot away, obviously, but what I've heard from him in interviews, what I've heard from him in, publications and other things, it seems like he is set on Kyle Schwarber figuring it out in the big leagues. But with other players, it could be different stories. I just think it depends on the player. It depends on the scenario. It depends on the coaching. I just think there are so many different factors with this. And it's going to be... there's going to be growing pains still because, yeah, they're the world champs, but they're still very young. So you're going to see some major adjustment periods throughout this process. It's hard to say there's going to be growing pains, but you got to face the fact there are going to be growing pains.
Yeah, they're just tough to sit through when everybody's going through growing pains at the same time.
Especially when it really... The team is... I can't say it enough. They're the world champs. And that makes it 10 times harder.
The last thing I want to talk about the Cubs is, I don't know if you read this, but Peter Gammons is reporting that Bryce Harper is interested in joining the Cubs.
Yeah, I think that's just talk. I don't really take it seriously. I don't.
I don't either, but it's one of those things that makes me sleep well at night, going, just imagine Chris Bryant and Bryce Harper batting in the same order.
I know. Wouldn't that be something?
The Cubs payroll would be through the roof, but it would be so awesome. In their primes, Bryce Harper, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Schwarber, Ian Happ, and Addison Russell, all in their primes. And that's Murderer's Row right there. Murderer's Row for the other team and Murderer's Row for the Ricketts, budget.
Well, you also got to keep in mind that there is the talks of the TV deal. Who knows what that's going to bring? Who knows what that's going to entail? But I guess that there is some sort of theory of form of more revenue to be able to afford multiple contracts like that through a TV deal. But even so, it's really hard to imagine that.
When you'd have two of the three best players in baseball, then, just the thought of that is two $30 million players on your team, possibly.
Right, exactly. It's a dream scenario, but, doesn't always go your way.
No.
It's something that you could just think about. We dream about a lot of things, but, I don't really buy much into that right now. I don't.
Yeah. If this was If this was football, we would call it like a Madden type play, because all the football fans are, do the trades on their Madden game, and that aren't anything that could happen in real life. So after this game today, which the Cardinals are now leading 4-1, the
be
Cubs
3-1. The guy should have struck out, but Ump didn't call it, and then he, hit an RBI single. So,
yeah. So after this, we've got a homestand again against the Marlins and the Rockies this week. Which, who knows what we're going to get against the Rockies, because they're a really good team.
Yeah, I'm actually going to the game Thursday.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So it'll be my first time sitting in those new bleachers, because I haven't sat in the outfield bleachers since 2014. So that'll be interesting. The Rockies have really been impressive this year, especially with the pitching too. So you can't take them for granted.
No, not at all. You can't. They've got just a team full of guys that can blast the ball, and they're in first place in arguably the toughest division in baseball. They've got a half-game lead on the Dodgers and a 2-game lead on the Diamondbacks. All three of those teams are really good.
Yeah, I mean, the Diamondbacks, look at them. What they're doing this year is what they should have been doing last year when they made all those moves. They're finally getting the pitching they want, and that's complementing the really good hitting. So, that's a win-win for them right there.
Absolutely. And I guess transitioning over to the White Sox, this has been the week where they really just came crashing back down to earth. They had a series against the Red Sox, a series against the Tigers. They lose 2 or 3 to the Red Sox and get stomped in all 3 games against the Tigers. I don't know what else to say other than that starting rotation that they've held together with shoestrings and duct tape is really starting to crumble a bit.
Well, I mean, it's like, what can you expect? Now, it's funny that you say the White Sox come down to earth. I feel like we've said that several times, and then the next week they end up winning 6 of 7.
It's kind of true. I mean, they are in last place right now, but their record.
There's a lot of parity in that.
Yeah, they're tied for last with the Royals, but you're starting to see the separation between the other teams in the division and them. The Twins are in first. You don't expect that for long. And the Indians are starting to play better. So I just really see that this is the time when the White Sox just realize what their talent level is and just start to plummet a little bit.
Right. Now, let's kind of recap the White Sox week. Obviously, the biggest game that they played all year was the Chris Sale, Jose Quintana matchup. And that's a game where we saw both Quintana and Sale get absolutely teed off. It was Sale's worst outing of the year, and I'm pretty sure it was Quintana's worst outing of the year. And that kind of leads into me talking about Quintana. What's his pitch value at right now? Everyone knows how talented Quintana is, but right now, he is not doing well at all.
Yeah, MLBTradeRumors.com is reporting that the market for Jose Quintana has cooled. So, I mean,
there
whatever
really hasn't been
worth.
much rumor talk at all, like I've said. Like, I know it's still early, but still, I've heard nothing.
Yeah, it's the only one you keep hearing about is potentially going to Houston, but does Houston really need to add a Jose Quintana? I mean, they're currently in first place by 13.5 games.
Yeah. They're the best team in baseball.
Yeah, they're really good. They're 13 and a half games in first place. Like, what do they need to do? That kind of, I've heard that the Rangers aren't interested in being sellers yet, but they're 15 games out of first place on June 4th.
Yeah, that's nuts. We all kind of had the expectations, but wow. It's just wow.
So do they need Quintana? Are they willing to give up whatever it is that the White Sox will want for a Quintana to have him, and what kind of value does he bring?
Yeah, because look at like Dallas Keuchel. He's been the Dallas Keuchel we were expecting, the Cy Young caliber Dallas Keuchel. And, the rest of the rotation seems like they're doing okay. I still think they go after more pitching because their offense has been murderer's row, but you need as much reliable pitching for a postseason run as you can get.
Yeah, I just don't see them making this move unless they get him for their terms and not the White Sox terms. And I personally still see value in Quintana, especially considering his salary and you have him under control for the next 3.5 seasons, assuming you trade for him at the deadline. But the value is not as high, nearly as high as it was after or during the offseason.
Well, and that gets into this whole conversation of, is Jose Quintana, and oh my God, the Cubs just took the lead.
What?
Yep. We are now Hap with a 3-run homer after a 2-run single by Almora. It is now 6-4 Cubs.
Well, that's a good sign.
Yeah, anyway, sorry about that. What I was saying about Quintana is people were saying, why didn't you trade him when his value is high? Why didn't you trade him while his value was high? You do have to keep in mind, you do have to find the right deal. You don't want to get hosed with now your best asset, because once Sale was gone, Quintana was your best asset. So it's really a situation that makes it difficult for the White Sox.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to give him away, and I think because Quintana's name isn't as sexy as Sale's, you can't discount what he's done and his numbers in this league, and his contract is just as good as Sale's. But the year he's having is not looking good as far as getting the most value for him. But honestly, is what kind of numbers can you expect a guy to put up on a garbage team like the White Sox?
Yeah, that's another thing that makes rebuilding difficult, because when you're in the first year of a rebuild and you still have assets you want to trade, the team around you can affect you more than you may initially think. So you could say you need to put up more productive numbers, but it can be hard. Baseball's a team sport when you don't have the right wheels going for you. Anthony Rizzo is a really good baseball player, and you put him on any team, he'll still put up really respectable numbers, but if he's on a good team like he is now, or if he's on like a bad team like the Padres, the numbers you're going to see put up are different. And same can go with pitchers. If the defense is not aligning right and not making the right plays, yet still not making errors, because runs do affect your ERA and that stuff does affect your FIP, it's going to reflect badly on you.
And also a thing to consider is they've put Jose Quintana as the number one pitcher on that staff, and who's 2 through 5. It's a number one. It's a big jump to be made the ace of your staff, especially when you've had a guy like Chris Sale basically your whole career there as the ace, and he's a true ace. Quintana's not a true ace. He's a very, very good pitcher, and he's worthy of giving up a lot for him, but he's a 2 or a 3.
Yeah, he's not Sale.
He's not Chris Sale, but he's a very good pitcher, and he there's a psychological thing is putting somebody at that spot where they've got to be the ace, especially when you're surrounding them with the likes of David Holmberg. And whatever garbage that they're trotting out.
Dylan Covey, Mike Pelfrey, the corpse of Mike Pelfrey.
Mike Pelfrey's been pitching well lately.
Yeah, he's been their best guy. Their best guy has been the corpse of Mike Pelfrey.
Yeah,
and Miguel
Gonzalez and Derek Holland.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Holland was really good so far. Last outing, he got shelled. Miguel Gonzalez is kind of starting to prove last year might have been kind of a fluke for him. He still had some good outings, but overall the numbers just are not the same because Miguel Gonzalez was very underrated last year. He had a very good season last year, but this year it hasn't been quite the same. Carlos Rodon, the one that they're not going to trade or planning to build around for the future, it's hard to know exactly when he's going to be back because of the injuries. So the pitching staff right now...
He's making his first rehab start at Class A on Tuesday.
About time.
It's going to be making his first live action since March 19th.
And it's June.
Mm-hmm. And they said it was supposed to be a fairly benign injury, but he's it'll be like 3 months before he's back on the Major League roster. That's pretty serious.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be frustrating for diehard White Sox fans because when they drafted him, I mean, there was a lot of hype, and rightfully so. That guy's slider, when it's on, is devastating, beyond devastating. And we've seen the flashes of his good stuff. Really good stuff. But there's been the consistency issues because there's been the injury issues. And I still think, and I'm not saying that this wrecked his career, because I still think he could come back and be a really good pitcher, but I still think they pulled him up from the big leagues too early.
I really agree with that too. But yeah, this White Sox team I think they're either going to have to stick with a guy like Quintana or absolutely start making a move for an early trade, because you don't want his stock to plummet anymore. And guys like Robertson and such want to trade them too, because he just had a bad outing today. He was shelled for 3 runs. You can't have your assets looking bad because you're on a bad team, and then try to get absolute steals of trades in there when you trade them. You've got to strike while the iron is hot.
Right, exactly. Like I said, easier said than done, but it's funny about the White Sox. I have looked at them from so many different angles this year. What I'm going to do is I'm going to list the good and bad angles I have for them, and we'll see if you agree. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfectly good.
Okay, so here is the good. They have some valuable assets that they will get decent to good return in. Agree?
Absolutely.
Let's go with the bad. They're inconsistent, which for a rebuilding team like this can be bad, because we have seen times where the White Sox, and again, it's still early, but so far, we've seen times where they're almost hovering around 500, and this is a season where they just need to be really bad. For their sake, the first year of a rebuild, as much as it pains to see, they just need to be terrible for their own future benefit. Agree? Disagree?
Yes. And to add to that is they will be drafting 11th in the next draft, and that's way too high for a bad team.
Right, and I mean, the big guy is Seth Beer. Everyone wants Seth Beer. But you know what? If you want Seth Beer, you got to be 1 or 2. You got to be 1 or 2.
Yeah, those guys, the Chris Bryants aren't available at 11.
Okay, here's another good. The minor league assets that they do have, their main guys such as Moncada and Kopech and Dane Dunning are looking really good. I think you can agree with that.
Absolutely. And another just add on to that as well is they've got the way that their minor leaguers that are looking good are staggered. They won't all come up at the same time and be, clog your salary cap at the same time. Is they stagger and you can bring guys up, over time period, so you can take this rebuild, a little bit longer to. I think that's the better way than having everybody come up at once and leave your farm system barren.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do it right, and if that means a little patient, you got to be patient. Okay, so here's kind of a potential bad. Some of the assets are not at the value you want. We already talked about Quintana, but I don't think Todd Frazier has that much value right now. Melky Cabrera has some, but it's not huge. I don't think there was a lot of expectations. And this is the most controversial one. And I'm going to say this right now, and I could be completely wrong, or things can completely change if I am right at the time. David Robertson is not that valuable right now. He has not been that good. He hasn't been horrible, but he has not been that great to get something big.
I agree with you, but the caveat to that is there are contending teams that need relief pitching, and there's not a lot of it to be had. So
Sure.
It is a seller's market. So that's what the only thing that bodes well is. I agree with you. David Robertson has not been that great. The White Sox bullpen as a whole has been pretty decent, but
it has.
But Robertson hasn't been that great, and I think they need to the way they're rebuilding. I think they need to get a haul for Robertson, and you just wonder if you're going to sucker anybody into him, or if they're just gonna wait it out and make the White Sox be desperate at the last moment and push him through.
Right. So that's a very good point. You said it's a buyer's market, so I will kind of construct that statement. With David Robertson's inconsistencies, knowing that this is a buyer's market, still putting the chance that he will be traded to someone who needs a reliever, it makes his value and the potential return more uncertain than if he was pitching to par.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Do I have any more? I think that pretty much covers everything I have. But here's my overall statement for this season, and we'll see how much of this statement you agree and if anything you could add. The White Sox are moving forward this season in a rebuild. It is their best interest to have their top selling assets perform at a high level, yet have a bad record. I know you don't intentionally do that, but the best scenario for the White Sox, in my opinion, is having guys like Frazier, Robertson, Melky, and Quintana to have really good trade value. At the same time, you want to lose as many games as possible.
That would be ideal. It's just really hard to do.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's you can't just go out and say you'll do that, but I'm just saying that would be the most ideal scenario.
That would be Rick Hahn would be dancing like a little schoolgirl in his office.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I understand White Sox fans, and I think most of the fan base gets the rebuild, and they understand the whole plan. White Sox fans, they're watching the season, and what I hear a lot of them say is, it's a rebuilding season, yet their competitiveness at least makes it semi-fun to watch. And I would say they've been more entertaining to watch this year in a rebuild, be competitive and kind of work their way back into games, even if they're not winning, than just seeing a supposedly contending team, quotes, just completely fall flat on their faces like they had the past 3 years.
Agree. I'm just looking at White Sox stats right now. Todd Frazier is batting 195.
Yeah.
But his OBP is a 306.
Not
for a 195
that average.
For that average, that's pretty darn good. He's got 25 RBIs, 8 home runs, and 41 strikeouts, which for him, not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, thing is, with Todd Frazier, it seems like this year it's less of the strikeouts and more of just the weak pop-ups.
And then what about Cabrera? Cabrera is batting .259, 308 on base, 31 RBIs, 6 home runs. Not that impressive at all, especially considering...
No, he's had some big hits recently, but yeah, it's nothing to unload for.
Yes, especially considering he's a left fielder.
Right.
He's not a particularly good fielding left fielder. Yeah, so it's... And David Robertson he's got a .93 whip. That's pretty good. But his 3.54 ERA as a closer. And he's save percentage. He's 8 of 9 in saves, 3 and 2 in his record. But he's only given up 2 home runs, not too bad, and 28 and 7 strikeout to walk ratio, not too bad, and a 164 average. So I mean, it's okay, but it's when he's been bad, he's been real bad.
Well, and that's what I say about David Robertson. For the most part, throughout his career, I mean, especially his White Sox career, because he had a really good years last year with New York, but his past seasons with the White Sox, he's mostly efficient. He mostly does his job. But when he implodes, it's really ugly.
Oh, yeah. But a team like the Washington Nationals, who are desperate for a closer, I mean, look what they did. They gave up for an Adam Eaton.
Right, and when you think about it, Robertson really is probably the best closer that's going to be on the sell market, because all the other top closers are on contending teams, whether it's Benintendi or Chapman or Wade Davis or Kenley Jensen. Well, I mean, there is another one, Mark Melancon, but Mark Melancon really has not been good this year. So, there's a little bit of a problem there.
Yeah. And looking at it is that game with Sale versus Quintana, between the two of them, they gave up 20 hits.
Yeah, wow.
20 hits and 13 runs and 4 home runs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the last thing I expected in that matchup.
And Friday's start with Derek Holland is the Tigers had 18 hits in the game. 12 of them were for extra bases.
I think that ties their or exceeds their all-time franchise record.
I mean, that's amazing. So it's not their franchise record, then their franchise record's pretty darn good. Derek Holland went 2 1/3 innings, 8 earned runs, 3 home runs. So that trade stock right there has got to be pretty low.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else about the White Sox? Yeah, really struggling. James Shields, rumored to be coming back soon. Maybe you can get a few starts out of him before potentially trading him if he pitches well. Before he got hurt, he actually pitched pretty well. Maybe they can convince somebody that he's the James Shields from a couple years ago and not the one from the last couple years.
Yeah, I don't know. We really haven't seen much of him. I mean, his approach is really different. When James Shields was in his prime, he had some really nasty stuff. When he was pitching, his first few weeks this season, because he really hasn't pitched much before going on the DL, he was much more of a junk baller. And with all the time on the DL and with his track record the past few years, I don't know. I just don't see him having much value right now.
No, I don't either, but it's at least something that the White Sox can throw out there and shop. So we shall see. But at least if they can get him in the rotation and pitching, then they have something tangible to show, other general managers, and at least try to make that sell.
Yeah, I just maybe if there's a team desperate, and maybe if there's a team that is just looking for something, small to get. I mean, the contract makes it a little more difficult, but like as we talked about before, the White Sox may be willing to eat some money.
And the Padres are still eating some of it.
Yeah, they are. They are.
So if you could get the White Sox to eat some of it too, and suddenly it makes it more affordable, and you don't give up much for it, who knows? You never know.
Again, it depends on when he comes back, though, because like I said, the sample size of effectiveness this year is really small compared to the last few years. I just don't think that a small sample size is going to get him a bunch of trade value all of a sudden. I don't see it. I don't think there'll be teams going out of their way to get a guy who's been really bad the past few years on their track record. But, like you said, you never know. Things can happen.
Yeah, he's only got 3 starts so far this year.
Right, so that makes... for me, makes it very unlikely that he's going to be traded for something significant. But, we'll see. There was a guy on the Sox I want to ask you about trade value. I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, I don't know if it'd be anything big, but Dan Jennings in the bullpen. They still have Dan Jennings, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what he's been doing, but I don't know. Maybe that veteran right there, maybe, I don't know.
He's got a 1.7 whip and almost 5 ERA.
Never mind.
But again, who knows? But I think the last thing I want to talk about with baseball, unless you have something else you want to talk about, is a week from tomorrow is the Major League Baseball draft. The White Sox will be picking 11th in the first round, and the Cubs will be picking 27th and 30th. Thank you, Dexter Fowler.
Yeah.
So, nothing special. You probably, the Cubs expect to probably draft a high school player that late in the draft. But I hear rumors that they're really antsy to sign a shortstop out of high school, shortstop out of San Diego. That's the rumor mill right now.
I heard something like that. I really haven't looked much into it because when you're the Cubs and you're in their position they are right now, the draft really isn't on my mind. It's not like the Bears where the draft was on our mind all year. It's a very different situation, so I haven't looked into it much, but it still makes things interesting because you know how smart Theo is, you know how smart the front office is, and you could say, hey, maybe we'll get some more stud prospects in this during this whole process.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, with 2 bites at the apple in the first round, hopefully they can at least bring something in. All right.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say about that.
We got a little tiny bit of NHL news. The draft will be in Chicago starting June 23rd. I'm actually going. Friday was my birthday, and my wife got me
that's
tickets.
awesome.
So she got me tickets for the Friday, the first day of the draft.
Oh, man, I'm jealous. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So it's the Blackhawks actually have a first round draft pick this year. They'll be drafting 26th. But the expansion draft is 2 days before on June 21st. And the rumor is that the Blackhawks may, quote unquote, allow the Las Vegas Golden Knights to select Trevor Van Riemsdyk as long as they also take Marcus Kruger in a trade.
Yeah, I actually wrote a small article about that, and I think while it would suck to lose Marcus Kruger, you need some cap relief, so you got to do something.
Yeah, I just don't think Trevor Van Riemsdyk has become the defenseman that we wanted him to become.
I don't think so either. A lot of injuries.
And Marcus Kruger has been very good on the penalty kill and is that fourth line guy, but I think we saw this year that the value of him maybe not as high compared to what the contract he has is. So if you can get rid of both of those guys and protect everybody else and get a little bit of salary cap relief, because the rumor is that the salary cap's either going to stay flat or only go up a tiny bit.
Yeah, there's really not going to be much of a difference. I was doing some research on their cap situation, and like right now, what they're owed, they're like negative in the cap situation, so they really need to do something. And Marcus Kruger, next year and the year after, those are the 2 years he has left guaranteed on his contract, and he's making just a little over $3 million.
Yeah, so it's not a ton of room, but at least gives you a little bit of wiggle space. And I still expect the Blackhawks to make some splashy move and move somebody, but I don't know what it is, because you can never fully guess what Stan Bowman is thinking. But I think this would be a win for the Blackhawks if they were able to do so.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where it's a win with subtraction, just because the cap is so hard. It's so difficult to move around, and when you're in a situation where you have a lot of big veteran contracts, you need to play the wiggle room game because you don't really have much of a choice, especially when you know that the cap change, if there will be one, really won't be that significant.
Absolutely. And you have to, I mean, the cap's been pretty flat the last couple of years, so you sort of had to expect it, but when you get the official word that it's not going to move very much, if at all, that's just got to be a sucky thing to hear if you're the Blackhawks.
Yeah, especially with those contracts on the books. It's hard to know when the cap is going to move or fluctuate, but it feels like with this hard cap right now, feels like you go into a season thinking, well, it's really going to maintain pretty much where it is. It'd be really shocking to see a really drastic shoot up in cap space. So it's something that I think Blackhawks management is prepared for no matter what. Is you can't expect the cap change to really benefit you in the future with the contracts you have committed. You know it's going to be a problem, and you have to think of every scenario to try to work around it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's going to be an interesting next 2.5, 3 weeks to see what the Blackhawks do in the draft. I'm banking on they're going to go hard and heavy on a goalie because they
have to.
They don't have anything in the tank. There's nothing. There's nothing behind Crawford.
Well, you want to put up Matt Carruth? No, thanks.
Yeah, they don't have anything.
Here's my question. I had a question for you really quick, if I may ask you this about the goaltending. Do you think they go out and sign anybody significant, or, I mean, if there's really anyone available? I mean, what do they do for the backup goaltender this year?
I think your two options are sign a young foreign player, or you sign a veteran past his prime.
Like, who's on the market? Like, what free agent goaltenders are even on the market?
Ray Emery?
Hey, reuniting.
He's a goalie that could fight people.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he was pretty solid in his last few years with the Hawks, but that was a few years ago. I wonder if Nikolai Khabibulin is busy. I'm kidding.
Let's see. Hold on. I'm bringing up the goaltenders. Ryan Miller is available. Jonathan Bernier, Steve Mason, Brian Elliott, Chad Johnson, Darcy Kemper, Anders Nilsson.
So what you're saying is
Michael Layton.
Oh, God. So what you're saying is it's all guys way past their prime, or guys who are going to go back to their respective team for starter money.
Matt Carruth is actually a free agent.
Is he really? I did not know that.
Yeah, so, I mean, Ryan Miller time. He was a $6 million cap hit last year.
Right. With the Canucks.
Yeah, he's not going to be that this year.
No. You think he'd take a small contract to go to the Hawks playing backup?
I doubt it.
That's the thing.
I think he would probably just retire before that.
Right.
God. Yeah, there's really not much on this list.
I mean, Darcy Kemper, that's like AHL borderline right there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really nothing on this list. So you got to figure they're going to go. They got to go a foreign young player, because there's really nobody old.
Right. Yeah. And it's not like you're going to sign Brian Elliott. I mean, why would he do that? I mean, we're looking for a backup goaltender here. We're not looking for a starting goaltender.
Yeah. I mean, it sucked to lose. It sucked to lose Scott Darling, but
It was going to happen.
It was going to happen. You know, it was just a reality, and they had to at least. They had to have this in their mind that he was going to be gone, and to start thinking ahead. You know, you've got Jeff Glass, but he's terrible. And he's 31.
Yeah, I was going to say that's I don't think that's an option.
Matt Cruz is a free agent, but I think he's a restricted free agent. But he's not very good. You've got Lars Johansson. And I believe he's a free agent as well. If nothing else, he's probably going to be your best option if you don't sign somebody. Yeah, I mean, here's Mike Condon, Keith Kincaid.
Condon's a free agent?
Yeah.
Huh. Thing is, I don't know, what are his numbers like? Because I thought he had a decent stretch, but then again, I haven't really watched that much of him.
Let's see. This year, the 2016-2017, he played in 41 games. 19-14 record. A .914 save percentage, 2.48 goals against. Yeah, so nothing crazy.
No, but I guess when you're looking for a backup goaltender and you need something, you can't expect a spectacular stud backup because, let's face it, Crawford and Darling were absolute blessings that are a very rare occurrence. And we were very lucky to have those two. Those two helped the Hawks to 50 wins last year. It is really hard to replicate that kind of duo.
Absolutely. I guess the last thing to cover is we got a few Bears questions in. The first was with the Kansas City Chiefs cut Jeremy Maclin this week and as a salary cap casualty on Friday, and I got a few people asking me if Jeremy Maclin would be a good fit for the Bears, and it's a tough one to say. You look at the Bears wide receivers, and if everybody stays healthy, you feel like you've got a competent group of receivers. Not great, but a competent group.
Better than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, before we've been relying on Alshon Jeffrey and then a bunch of nobodies. But, number one is you can't count on Kevin White being healthy because he hasn't been in his first 2 years. Cameron Meredith already injured his thumb during OTAs.
Yeah, that's so Bears.
And so you don't know what you're going to get out of him, because I've heard everything from he'll be fine and he'll ready to go on, the first day of camp, to he might be on the PUP list to start the regular season. So I don't know what to expect, and the Bears aren't going to just offer that information up. So Jeremy Maclin would easily be the most. He would be the, especially if you consider Cameron Meredith is hurt, he would be the best wide receiver on the Bears. But he is coming off his career worst numbers in 2016. He just had 44 receptions for 536 yards and 2 touchdowns in 12 games. But part of it is he battled through a groin injury all last season. But if this works out, this could be the second miracle where the offseason where the Bears had a really good late roster addition. Last year it was Josh Sitton. This year could be Jeremy Maclin. The Bears let Alshon Jeffrey walk to Philadelphia. Kevin White can't stay on the field. Cameron Meredith was really good last year, but they're asking him to be the best wide receiver, and he's got a thumb injury. Who knows what you'll get out of Victor Cruz and Kendall Wright. You already bet the farm on Mitch Trubisky, so you should go all in and give him a group of weapons. So I would go after him, especially considering that you have like almost $30 million in salary cap space.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of wiggle room. You got a lot, it's not like you're pressing for money here. There's a lot of room to play with, so you can kind of take more of those risks.
And the best news about it is that of the teams that would be very good fits for him, which I consider the Bears one of the teams that would be a fit for him, is the Bears are the only one that have a lot of wiggle room as far as salary go. I know the Eagles would love to add him. There's several teams that would love to add him, but they just their salary cap situation is right up against the limit. So they would have to do a lot of finagling to be able to sign him, whereas the Bears can just free and clear sign him and not have to do anything.
Right, exactly. So, I wouldn't mind if they took a little more risks like that with the room they have and with kind of a window of availability. You might as well. I wouldn't really object to it. That's kind of why, when they've made these small moves here or there, whether it was with Demps or Cruz or even Mark Sanchez, that's kind of why I'm like, well, small deals, whatever.
Sanchez, who already got hurt.
Yeah, he's already hurt. I know, but when the deal was made at the time, I'm like, yeah, he's not great, but Yeah,
so I mean, I would be very open to it. I know he'll have plenty of suitors because although he had a bad season last year, he's a talented wide receiver. And the Chiefs cut him because of salary cap issues. It wasn't about money. It was about the salary cap room. He was a $10 million hit for them. So I don't know if the Bears are willing to give him the money he wants, but if you're the Bears, you've got to at least kick the tires on that one because he would step in and be your best wide receiver.
Right, definitely.
Another question I got asked was, who has the most to prove in 2017 for the Bears? I'm curious to hear what your opinion is.
I think one of the biggest ones is Kevin White. He's got to prove that not only is he able to stay healthy and stay on the field, but that he is a valuable asset. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Kevin White. From what it seems, talking to a lot of fans, it's almost like they're saying this is the last straw. This year will tell us what he is.
I actually had Kevin White at first, and I started to think about it a little bit more, and I changed my mind. And it's not that I don't think Kevin White has a lot to prove, because that's absolutely true. I put Charles Leno Jr. because he's slated to be the starting left tackle. He's in a contract year, in his rookie deal, and he was a late round pick. So he's making like $1 million a year or whatever it is. He's going to have to step up, make the Bears make a decision on signing him, improving his worth. He's been meh. He's been mediocre at best as a left tackle, and he's got to come in this season and really show not only the Bears but the whole league that he is a viable option as left tackle to get paid, because otherwise he's going to get stuck with a 1 year, 2 year deal, and when you get out of your first contract, if you can't get a big money contract, that's sort of your window of opportunity there. So I think he's got a lot to prove, because if he plays like he did last year, he's not going to get a big contract. He's going to have to really.
Yeah, no, I definitely, you're definitely right about that. The reason why I always argue Kevin White first is the fact that he was a high draft pick, that he was supposed to be the redeeming guy factor of that awful 2014 season. But it's definitely a valid point that you made.
I mean, there's a whole slew of guys that need to prove something. Kyle Fuller needs to prove something because the Bears opted to not pick up his fifth-year option. So he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. He's got a lot to prove. They brought in guys to... So, I mean, my part of my reasoning was to bump down Kevin White. I mean, he's definitely got a lot to prove, but to bump him down my list was the Bears brought in other wide receivers in case Kevin White doesn't. They didn't bring in other left tackles. And so he's standing on an island having to prove something, so the eyes are going to be on him. If Kevin White fails again, we're going to say, well, you know what? We got Victor Cruz. We've got Cameron Meredith. We've got Kendall Wright. We've got Marcus Whedon. You know, if Kyle Fuller fails, we're like, well, you know, we got Prince Mukamara. We've got Marcus Cooper. We've got Webb. You know, we've brought in other guys. And that's the Bears brought in insurance policies in those positions. But that left tackle spot, nothing there. That is an island.
Yeah, definitely.
The last question we got was, do you expect Lamar Houston to get cut? I thought about this one, and he's been after his first year, he's been talked about as a potential cap casualty for every year since. And the way I look at it is they have no need for the cap space. They've got plenty of money still. They could sign every other free agent that's on the market and still have money. But the depth isn't so good there at the outside linebacker position. I think they've got some talent, but I just don't think the depth is there. So I think he survives another year unless some undrafted rookie just blows the doors off of everybody and wows them, which I just don't see as the case. So I expect Lamar Houston to be there, and I think they're actually going to count on him.
Yeah, for me, it's hard to say. I thought he was going to be gone a few years ago, but he stuck around. He's been very up and down, some controversial moments, but you know, I'm not going to say they're going to cut him just yet. I think it really depends on what happens going on in training camp and whatnot.
Well, I don't really have anything else to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Alex?
No, I'm just unfortunate to tell you the Cardinals have tied the game and are still rallying.
All right, well, I guess let's end this episode so the two of us can sit back down and watch the rest of this game, and hopefully the Cubs win.
Yeah, it's just such a shame because they came back and it looked like things were going to be smooth sailing, and then enter the Rondon coaster, and yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys all so much for listening. Please make sure that you subscribe on however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1 or at Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, Facebook.com/SwerskiSports. And make sure you are liking and sharing with your friends. And until next time, bear down.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh. And the Bears go Bear eating.